What's up gamers, it's Grant here coming at you with another SpiritVale build guide. Today I'm sharing my favorite build so far, Summoner. For context, I'm a huge minion player, having specialized in minions on PoE for years now and made many minion items on TFT's Mirror Shop. One thing I want to say off the top, Summoner is not bad in this game. It's not bad at farming and it's not bad at bossing. I was led to believe this primarily by players who didn't want to put in the effort to learn the class and its mechanics, but I did, and here's pretty much everything I know so you can also have fun in this class. So let's go over some base attributes of minions. There's a lot of misconceptions on this and the game doesn't make it super clear, so I want to summarize what is sort of available on the Discord and in other sources all in one place for you. So your base stats don't actually apply to your minion at all. The plus stats on your gear and artifacts are applied to your minion, so this includes autocast chance on weapons, percent HP, attributes, any cards that you have, with an exception that your minion cannot be made ranged via a card. So the only stats, base stats that matter are the ones that keep you alive. That's vitality, agility, and intelligence. Roughly in this order, though I think there's an argument to be made for intelligence to be ahead of agility because it gives you magic defense. But the only thing that affects minions is that plus number you see on the right where it says agility plus 42. That is what is being passed on to the minion. So like players, minions also have a max attack speed of 193, which is 7.14 attacks per second. This is calculated best at the moment using an external spreadsheet. I'll link that in the description, but shout out to Dreamwaltzer for creating and maintaining this. But the way to do this is you want to make a copy of it and play around with it, and you'll notice that the base player level matters a lot. And also the attack speed pressure as a result is reduced as you level. But you can plug in the gear stats, the ones that I said apply to the minions, specifically agility in this case is the main variable. The weapon type matters, there's certain sets that are relevant, your level of arcane surge, but just make sure you pay attention to the bottom red box where it shows the minion that you care about, in this case the wolf for us, and that number obviously being over 193. As you level up, this is a little bit harder to accomplish without really dedicated cards and gear. But as you get closer to 150, around I think 115 mark, this became very achievable for me. So what are the offensive layers in the build? Mainly we're looking at impale damage from Royal Fang, the master physical auto attack weapon in this game. This means that you're going to benefit from things like the impale gem, all of the skill gems that apply to the wolf's abilities you see on the right. The crit damage gem if you're ultra wealthy, though I am nowhere near close to that amount of money. But things like strength on gear, the percent plus attack, and also something you might not be as aware of is the elemental damage from the weapon enchant cards. This gives you 25% more damage, which is an incredible amount. You are very incentivized to match this to what you're farming, whether it's a boss or a map, to try to get the most bang for your buck. These cards are really cheap, and you can learn how to search for those on my economy guide that I made on my channel. Another thing that you should know is that taking your shield off for weapons with a two-handed stance like Royal Fang give you 25% more damage. So there's a lot of damage that's really easy to get. Additionally, plus auto attack targets from things like Keg and Blitz artifact set are really useful to make your clear speed better, which is part of what takes this build to the next level when we're farming. So in terms of defensive layers, having a minion tank most everything is one of the best ways to not die, because oftentimes it'll die before you do. But in addition to that, because we have a large amount of agility, we have a lot of flee giving us 95% evade chance. An important distinction here is that this is reduced by the number of enemies around you. So if you have a lot of mobs attacking you, you will still die through flee and you'll be confused because normally you're evading everything. We also have a large HP pool by prioritizing HP on gear and our artifacts. We have stats that are all defensively oriented. We also use Guardian Bond anytime we're bossing and anytime we're in danger, which gives us a lot of healing received and HP percent. It also heals us for 2% of our HP per second for both our minion and us, so the more HP we have, the more regeneration we get. So there's three main setups I want to go through in this video. One, the all-rounder build that's useful for starting if you have an established character to farm the gear on. Generally, this whole video is focused on players who already have the ability to farm. You definitely can start on this build, but you're going to need to be a little bit more judicious with how you build the character and what pieces you farm when. I'll have some tips at the end about this, but just know that this is mostly for people who want to assemble a good character with an existing character, not really optimized for you if you're starting out. But I'm also going to show, secondly, a speed farm orientation that's really good for any mob content in the game if you have high quality gear. I think you can still get away with it. Without high quality gear, it's rather lax, but we're really sacrificing a lot for movement speed in that setup. And then the bossing setup, finally, which varies by boss, but I want to give an example of how you would optimize or tailor your setup to a boss. For all of my setups, my stats at level 150 are 99 Vitality, 99 Agility, and 75 Intelligence. Remember, this just affects my tankiness. These are the skills on the right. You swap between Guardian and Fury Bond based on how comfortable you feel. And most of the stats are pretty straightforward. So the all-rounder setup, it's comfy, it's cozy, it's tanky, it has good defenses, it does good damage. The general goals of this are to get agility, per the minion speed attack calculator, 293 for the minion, not for yourself, to be clear. Then you really want to prioritize strength because it gives you physical damage. So an ideal roll in an item is generally 3 strength, 2% attack, 2% HP. This character is worry-free, it's very durable. You can swap the conversion element in your weapon to whatever you want to farm. So if you're going to go to a fire map, you put the water card in, you do a lot more damage. This gets you more items, more money. And generally we use the Eternus for the artifact set for its solid gains for stats, HP, longer haste buff is really nice. But feel free to experiment here. Most of this gear is not mandatory by any means, it's just strong, good gear and gets the job done and keeps your character alive. You definitely can veer from this a little bit and try things on your own, see what you come up with, and suggest anything to me in the comments that you find that's better than what I have. This is the gear for the all-rounder setup. Feel free to look at the cards. A lot of them aren't mandatory. One thing to note on the boots, we can use this cheaper Storm Coil card instead of the hair card, so since we don't use mana for any real reason on our character in any significant way. But otherwise, it's all pretty standard stuff, using the stun card and the helmet, and then just general utility stuff all around. So our speed farming setup is all about being fast. We literally put plus move speed everywhere we can. Your minion gains this movement speed as well. As I mentioned before, the artifacts and the cards and the stats on our gear applies to the minion. So all of this move speed applies to the wolf, who is going to go crazy fast. We also want to prioritize damage so it kills things really quickly as it's moving fast. Generally, we're swapping out Eternus here for Blitzcore, so we're getting +2 auto attack targets. And we're swapping out our utility, our back piece, for the Fleet Wings, which gives us even more movement speed. This build is all about running around the map as fast as you can, and I've actually surprisingly pushed Paladins out of farming spots with this build, which I didn't think was possible with how much they sort of own the game in certain ways, but that's how good this is. They're never expecting a summoner to run past them at Mach 10 when they're taunting, and one tap every single mob. And you can see on all the gear here, we have movement speed everywhere we can possibly think of, on the utility piece, on the leg card, on the boot card, it's on the face mask card as well. So it's pretty much everywhere imaginable, and then you just cast haste on top of this for a free 25% move speed on top of everything, and your character is moving incredibly fast. So this is the part of the setup that I think will be most informative, even if you're a player who's been playing for a while. If you haven't killed the endgame bosses, this should be a pretty good way to understand how to do that, not only on this character, but on every character. So first of all, you need to understand and research the boss. So this is a helpful link where you can do that. You can understand what abilities it uses. And you really want to counter the things that you can with cards. So whether that it curses, it stuns, it freezes, anything the boss does that's annoying, you really want to make sure that you are doing your best to prevent that from affecting you or your minion in this case. So the main dangerous abilities for Cosmic Entity, which is the level 135 boss in Night Garden, are Shadow Release, which is actually a Fizz ability, Damnation, Dark Exorcism, Volatile Bolt. Everything he does while he's enraged can be dangerous because he does way more damage when he's enraged. But the way I combat this is by using a resistance card in my legs that give 10% neutral resistance, and a conversion card in my chest. So just to briefly explain this, if you hit the resistance cap, which is 75% for something like Shadow Resistance, which we're not really getting close to in this build, but to use that as an example, you get additional 50% damage reduction from the Shadow Conversion card, the Werewolf card, which would put you at 87.5 theoretical damage reduction. So this means that you're getting a lot of free damage reduction from just slotting a single card into your chest. So generally you want to just slot whatever card that is the element of the boss you're fighting, and obviously test this out and see if that's actually the most dangerous abilities in practicality. So you want to try and veil some here. You want to see what kills you and your minion and then adapt to that. And you can just resummon your minion if they die. So if they die to the Earthquake when you're fighting Goblin War Chief, you can just get a free reset, assuming you can get the cast off, which is a benefit this class has that I don't think anybody else has, especially in solo. So the fight's not over if your minion dies. You just have to run away and hope you get that, resummon off at the last second before, the boss attacks you too much. So just continuing on this setup, we're going to be capping our attack speed, of course, which is easy at 150 with all the plus stats on the gear we have. But you can honestly be a lot more optimal and lazier than I am. I'm generally moving around and sort of trying to avoid abilities, but I think if you make this character even tankier, you're going to be able to full AFK most every boss in the game. And obviously the weapon is enchanted to counter Cosmic Entity with the Shadow. Given the boss is holy, this is a free 1.25 or 25% more damage modifier. We're using Guardian Bond, so we get a ton of health regen for us and the minion. And this is where the active gameplay comes in. On this boss, I do cast Resonance Well onto the minion to help them with rot damage, pools, whirlwinds. And also, in certain moments, it's really useful to heal the minion and yourself if needed. Sometimes if you're too close to this boss, it'll Shadow Bolt you, and if this overlaps with something else, or you get hit by a rogue mob or something, you can end up dying, so you want to make sure you're paying attention on bosses that are, at this level. So to summarize all that, for your bossing setup, you want to counter the boss things you need to. In this case, it's Curse. You want to swap your chest element to be the same as the boss. You have to buy those boss cards or farm them yourselves. You want to make sure that you have resistance cards in your legs, that your items are refined to make sure that they give high resistance, high HP. You want to make sure you have good rolls where possible, especially if you're challenging the endgame bosses. And you want to avoid the dangerous mechanics. One example here on Cosmic Entity is a lot of the abilities are frontal. So it's helpful to be perpendicular to the boss, with it facing away from you and towards your minion, because he'll cast Shadow Release and Volatile Bolt at his concurrent target. And especially when the boss is enraged under 50% and doing a lot more damage, this can almost, or in fact, one-shot you. So you want to make sure that this is not being aimed at you. So there's definitely a dance here, and if you're playing with other players, generally it'll prefer their aggro over your minions. So if they start attacking the boss, it's going to start going in every direction and mayhem can ensue. So just be aware there's other variables. You'll find that out when you attempt or kill the boss. And this is all of the gear. One thing I forgot to mention earlier on the Royal Fang, the most important stats are damage, melee, and crit damage. This is just because they have the highest values. You can really go with, percent attack. Strength is also good on this item. The perfect one is obviously a 3 strength, 10 damage melee, 10 crit damage, but you really don't need a perfect Royal Fang. You can get away with one that is even only, 1 damage melee roll if you want. So don't stress out too much about that or some of the specifics here. But for that face mask, we're using the earmuffs for extra HP. We're obviously getting curse immunity there. We're converting the shadow element on the tainted plasma suit. We're getting extra HP from the mystery card, the shade card on the doom keg. And you can search, if you don't know like what the cards are and you just know like it's mystery or whatever the prefix is, you can search that prefix on the wiki and you'll get the card name. So if you ever see screenshots of people's builds and there says like mystery doom keg, you can just search mystery on the official wiki and know what card it is without needing like a specific screenshot. But of course I include those so it's more useful for you guys to not have to look everything up one by one. And then finally I use the neutral resistance card on the leg so Shadow Release does less damage because it's one of the most damaging abilities the boss does. And obviously this isn't a leveling guide, sorry about that, but I wanted to give a couple tips. The Spell Summoner is probably the easiest to level, not the auto attack version unless you have a lot of gear and cards to funnel to your main character. I would start with Cat and do intelligence and casting, use the abilities like Soul Strike and Banishment Field, which are really strong when leveling. But if you do want to go the auto attack route, you can farm Blitz Core pretty early around the 40s and Forgotten Depths. You can get the attack speed cap as soon as you can. Search the wiki for cards that have attack speed and equipment that helps facilitate that. And then also check out Dream Waltzer's guide in the pins of the Summoner channel on the Discord for some options. He's the minion expert in this game and is a large reason why I know all the stuff I know. So really big shout out again to Dream Waltzer for all the help he has given the community and to me specifically. And that pretty much wraps up the build guide. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and catch me on Discord if you need any help on your character specifically. I'm always down to help out. See you in the next one.